Meantime, we're tracking this story for you. President Trump issuing an authorization for covert CIA action in Venezuela. The latest step in an aggressive campaign, some say, against the Maduro government.
Our border correspondent Jaeson Jones is tracking the developments. He joins us live with more. Jason, good morning.
Hi, Michelle. Good morning. Well, incredible revelation yesterday in the White House by the president. We've got a clip of that yesterday, but listen to what he says about the why he's authorizing these covert operations by the CIA in Venezuela.
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found. I think Venezuela is feeling heat, but I think a lot of other countries are feeling heat too. We're not going to let this country, our country, be ruined because other people want to drop, as you say, their worst. They have given us their worst.
Here's what he's talking about, guys. We were there on the ground in December of 22 when Tren de Aragua was sent here by the Maduro regime. We broke a lot of those stories back to back, not only from U.S. Border Patrol intel, but from local law enforcement who were illuminating that the Venezuelan government were sending Tren de Aragua into this country to conduct disruption operations across the nation, as we saw in Colorado and the killing of children in Houston, Texas, and the long list goes on. But that's really the beginning tripwire to this. As you look at Venezuela, what they have been doing as a violence generator down in South America, working not only with their own cartel of the Suns, who work directly for the Maduro regime, but providing a sanctuary for the Sinaloa cartel out of Mexico, Cartel Jalisco New Generation, and other cartels along South American regime. This is why they've got to stop them. And I'm going to tell you right now, from all my sources on the ground, they're saying, look, what they're doing in the Caribbean right now is just the beginning. Watch the Pacific. This is where things are going to change as now adjustments are being made by the Maduro regime. Back to you.
Jaeson Jones with the latest there. Jason, stick around if you can, if you don't mind. I want to bring in former CIA covert operations officer Mike Baker, who's been weighing in on this topic. We talked about it earlier in the 9 o'clock hour with you, Mike. Typically, covert operations are indeed that, as you know very well, covert. This one is announced. Talk about that and maybe what the implications of that can be.
Yeah, it's not announced so much as leaked, right? I mean, individuals talking with guarantees of anonymity, so they feel, and for whatever reason, right? Some people just like to, you know, they can't shut their pie hole. So it's disappointing in that regard because that's not, you know, how a covert or a clandestine operation is supposed to go. But look, I think Jason's point there in the story or in the reporting is extremely important, which is that the Maduro regime, right, is, we know from individuals who were in Maduro's government, who were working with his military, who have fled the country. We know about the evidence and the ties to narco trafficking, right? And we shouldn't be shocked that perhaps Latin American officials in some governments over the years have been engaged in and benefited from trafficking, right? That's just, if anybody's surprised by that, then I don't know where you've been. So I'm just glad to say that at this stage of the game, having been involved in the drug wars of years past and in counter-narcotics operations with the agency, I'm just glad that now it actually is a war on drugs, because everything else up to this point really hasn't been that effective in resolving the problem. Not that you're ever going to get it down to zero sum. But I think it is time, you know, rather than just continuing doing the same things.
Sure. When you release the video, too, it's definitely a way to dissuade future cartel members from taking out their drug boats for a little ride. You know, maybe you don't want to be the next target there. But, Jason, have we noticed any retaliation from Venezuela following the release of these videos and, of course, the aftermath of these strikes?
Well, you know, we heard the other day that there was a threat against law enforcement in Chicago directly linked to these cartels. And the U.S. government was not very detailed on which cartel it was and how that really worked. But I will tell you, and I mean this, I never listen to what any administration tells you publicly. Look at what they're doing. And when you look at South America, the recent designation of Cartel Los Lobos, the cartel of Chineros, these are Ecuadorian cartels. I think you're going to see Cartel Golfo out of Colombia next, because these operations are all involved there. That's the thing about this. This is what the Maduro regime has become, and they extend all across South America. The government knows this. The problem is that this has not really been illuminated to the United States just yet. Now, to validate that, look at what President Trump talked about. He said we've hit them 5 times. We're barely seeing ships now moving narcotics in the Caribbean for even up to a couple of days. Why is that? We now know that up to 70% of the cocaine has now moved over to the Pacific side. And I'm going to say it again and again. These are the areas in the waterways that we need to be watching and looking for moving forward.
Mike, one of the reports, specifically the New York Times, talks about obviously this operation that we see here that's taken place overseas, or on the water, if you will. But when you go to a ground operation, they call this, or they say that this administration, or the CIA, however you want to look at it specifically, would have, this would be a lethal operation, that they would have that capability. Is that true, and can you elaborate on that? Obviously, lethality is used here as you see this boat completely explode with passengers on board, smugglers, as the administration says. Is that the same when you're on land, and how does that change things?
Yeah, look, the authorization that we're talking about, that some people revealed, it's basically, it covers a broad turf here, right? But it could just simply mean accessing intelligence, right? So the collection of information on the ground, perhaps, as an example. It doesn't necessarily, you can't draw a direct line to say, okay, now what they're going to do is suddenly we're dropping, forces onto the ground, and we're going to. But so what you're saying is you're setting the table for potential operations that may benefit this overall effort, right? And so I don't think anybody should read too much into what this means in the short term. Right, but look, having said that, there's a $50 million bounty on Nicolas Maduro's head, right, for information leading to his arrest. So, we're kind of the horse is out of the barn at this point. I know that the administration, has pushed back and said, look, we're not talking about regime change here, right?
But they are and they're not.
They are and they're not. They are and they're not. But again, I would go to Jaeson's point. This is a problem throughout the area, right, throughout the region. And whether you're talking about Venezuela, you're talking about Ecuador, as he pointed out, whether you're talking about Honduras in the past and currently, too, and its ties, the government's ties to narco trafficking, we've always kind of danced around this issue, the war on drugs, right? And we've done a variety of things. Now, as long as we're on solid legal ground, that's great. I think I have no problems with the strikes. Again, I'd like to see a little bit more information put out there about the individual targets, and I think they can do that without revealing sources and methods. Just so that, if nothing else, the White House isn't constantly taking incoming fire from the Democrats saying, I can't believe you're doing this. Although it's interesting and entertaining that they've put the Democrats in the position of defending narco traffickers.
Yes.
Not surprising, but
yeah, not surprising.
Absolutely.
Right.
Final thought, Jaeson, any word on coordination between CIA members and also Texas DPS, people who work the border every single day?
Well, when it comes to the CIA, you're never going to hear about that. And, Mike can speak to that much better than I can. But I can tell you on the intelligence collection side, all across this nation is a direct result of what the Biden-Harris administration did by opening these borders. Tren de Aragua has been moving in since December of 22 that we know of. That virus spread across the country, guys, which we illuminated. And I can tell you that the game that's so different here now is that local, state, and federal law enforcement across this nation can provide incredible intelligence domestically that will help them drive operations in Venezuela along that entire stretch there in South America.
All right, this was a great discussion, great panel. Border correspondent Jaeson Jones joining us live. Thank you. And Mike Baker, we appreciate that.